What's up, folks? This is Tony Brewer. You're listening to Cogitations. Like, really, Cogitations this time, not Christianity Now. All right, let me see here. I really feel like, again, I don't know what's going on. I feel discombobulated. Everything's the same. I'm just going to try to ignore the feeling. Folks, you're listening to Cogitations. Cogitations is the podcast where we think about things, we contemplate them, we turn them over in our minds, and then we discuss them. Daniel chapter 7, verse 28, Daniel writes, "Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me. My countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart." We're not going to keep the matter in our heart. We're going to talk about it. Today, we're going to talk about a sense of urgency. You know, sometimes things that are negative, if they are harnessed and used correctly or used well, they're not inherently negative. They can actually be positive. That's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. People typically have a sense of urgency. I'll tell you where I got the idea for this podcast from. The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, finished by Brandon Sanderson. I think Brandon Sanderson had a part in the last 3 books, and the parts were ascending in scope toward the last book. I think the last book was about 95% Brandon Sanderson, but he did a really good job, I have to say, finishing the series after Robert Jordan died. But in this series, there are this race of humanoid creatures called Ogier. It's a play on ogre. Everything in this earth, everything in this world is several thousand years in our future. It's really rather clever, the way Robert Jordan conceptualized the world. Most fantasy writers play in J.R. Tolkien's sandbox. Robert Jordan is no exception. You know, you have Trollocs, they're like the orcs. You have Midrall, they're like the Nazgul. You have Forsaken for the bad guy villains, the second tier bad guy villains, right below the ultimate big bad guy. Well, that's like your Saruman, and well, that's like your wizards, okay? In Middle Earth, the big bad is Sauron. Well, that would be the dark one. But what Robert Jordan did really, really well, what he did that was different from Tolkien, I think, is he conceptualized reality very interestingly. In his world, time is cyclical. It's conceptualized as a wheel, and the wheel weaves like a weaver's wheel. The wheel weaves as the wheel wills is the big thing in the book. And each age is represented by a spoke on the wheel, and there are 7 ages. And this is, I think, I can't remember now. I think the current age is the 3rd age, and our age is the 1st. I can't remember, but it's just really interesting. Now, these Ogier, they live a long time, and they think that humans are very erratic, and they always walk around with a sense of urgency they think humans do. And so it affects how they go through life. In fact, there's a saying, if somebody loses their temper, in the ogre world, they are said to have put a long handle on their axe. And it's very, very difficult to make an ogre angry or to make him act in haste. But when that happens, it's really explosive. So I thought, well, what is it that makes humans seem so erratic? Well, for one, it's their short lives that they live compared to the ogre. But then I got to thinking, what about us? Because it is true. We are driven by a sense of urgency. Like we have this language about time. I feel the passage of time. I feel the weight of the years pressing down upon my shoulders. I can feel the weight of the passage of time. I can feel time grinding. Talking about J.R. Tolkien, one of the jokes, or one of the jokes, one of the riddles, jokes, one of the riddles in the chapter of The Hobbit called Riddles in the Dark, where Bilbo Baggins and Gollum are having a riddle contest to figure out whether or not Gollum will show Bilbo the way out. Gollum gives this riddle about time. This thing all things devours, birds, beasts, trees, flowers, eats metal, gnaws steel, it grinds hard stones to mill, kills king and ruins town, and beats high mountains down. What is it? Well, it's time. We personify time. We make the passage of time out to be a doctor, a physician. Time heals all wounds. We make the passage of time out to be sometimes a god. And people that believe in evolution, they think that multiplied billions of years ago, there was a primordial sludge on this marble that we call Earth, and then enough time passed, and lo and behold, something came from nothing, and now you have single-cell organisms, and enough time passed from that, there's going to be single-celled organisms multiply and evolve into multi-cell organisms and complex organisms, vertebrates, having skeletons and organs and nervous systems. They crawl out on land. And give enough time, you have human beings with all the great marvelous things that human beings have done. Time is a god, according to some people. Time is also a savior. Sometimes people think that they can do something wrong or do something sinful. And instead of confessing it, repenting and confessing and bringing forth fruit meet for repentance, sometimes people think that, well, if just enough time passes, that sin won't matter. So we think of time as a savior. Well, I'm here to tell you that we do need to personify time. And we need to understand that we don't have a lot of it. The psalmist asked, Lord, teach us to number our days, because they're important, they're finite. So we should have an inherent sense of urgency about ourselves. I'm 47 years old. Yesterday, I was 25 and thought I had done all the growing in the world that I was ever going to do. All the life changes were made. All the important life decisions were made. Now I'm 47, almost 25 years later. Time. It's urgent. We don't have a lot of it. I'll be lucky to have another 3 decades. If I try really, really hard and do really, really good, I might be able to stretch that out to 4. But, as our brother James writes, what is your life? It's but a vapor that appeareth for a little while, and it's gone. You don't know what's on tomorrow. I don't know what's on tomorrow. So there is an actual, it almost seems like there is an actual FOMO, fear of missing out, built into us. And I think that's what drives us, because we fear missing out on something we could get. That's why, and some people have it to a greater degree than others. That's why some people are more driven. That's why some people have this drive, like to the point where somebody like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, or, no matter what you think of him, Jeff Bezos or the Windows guy, Bill Gates. So they've learned how to harness this. And they learned how to harness this sense of urgency and this fear of missing out. And they've created a wonderful life on earth. We need to figure out how to do that spiritually. And I'm talking to me. When I say we, I really mean we on this one. Preachers and podcasters and people that speak publicly, they've got this dirty little trick where whenever they say we, they really say we just so they don't come off as so harpy. A lot of times whenever preachers and teachers and podcasters and video presenters and public speakers, a lot of times when they use the editorial we, what they really mean is you. Not this time. Not this time. One of my greatest strengths, this is rather introspective, one of my greatest strengths, one of my towering strengths, and one of my deficits, most egregious deficits, is I just don't have any fear of missing out. I'm not driven like I should be. I need to learn how to harness. I mean, because I still have it, right? I mean, I can still feel that sense of urgency. I just have to be a whole lot more stressed to feel that sense of urgency and to have that external motivation. So maybe the lesson here is we need to learn how to internally motivate. You know, I didn't plan on doing it, but I'm going to read my 8 verses in the book of Proverbs just because. If we're internally motivated, I was already marked there. I read this passage of scripture a lot. Just listen. This is a person who, they're not externally motivated. They're not motivated by external things like the fear of missing out. They're motivated by something different. If you can adopt everything in these 8 verses and figure out how to implement them in your life, well, that's the beginning of an if-then proposition. If you can master the principles in these 8 verses, then you'll have a better life. How worthy of an endeavor is that? Let's go. Boast not thyself of tomorrow. This is Proverbs 27. I want to read 1 through 8. Boast not thyself of tomorrow, for thou knowest not what a day may bring forth. Let another man praise thee, and not thine own mouth, a stranger, and not thine own lips. A stone is heavy, and the sand weighty, but a fool's wrath is heavier than them both. Wrath is cruel, and anger is courageous. Anger is outrageous. I need to get my glasses fixed. But wrath is cruel, and anger is outrageous. But who is able to stand before envy? Open rebuke is better than secret love. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Now listen, here's what you really need to lean in and listen to. The full soul loatheth the honeycomb. If your soul is full, you don't have any fear of missing out. This is a totally different podcast that I intended to bring today. Totally different lesson. But we're gonna park right here because I think this is important. I'm preaching to me right now. A person whose soul is full, they're contented. They don't have a fear of missing out. They're not going to go chase that sin, that pleasure of sin for a season because they're content. They're not going to go chase after let's just walk down it. They're not going to brag about tomorrow because they don't have any fear of missing out. They know that they've got a good enough today. Let another man praise thee and not thine own mouth. They're not going to brag about what they're doing because they don't have to. Why do you brag? Why do I brag about some of the accomplishments that I achieve? It's because I want your acceptance. I want your validation. And that's healthy. When I say brag, I'm using that accommodatively. Like when you share good news with your loved ones, with your brothers and sisters in Christ, that's not bragging per se. That's weeping with those that weep and rejoicing with those that rejoice. Success is a burden. In order for your brothers and sisters to help you bear it, you have to share that. So there's a difference between bragging and just sharing an accomplishment that you're proud of. So this is really talking about bragging. And that's why people brag, because they're externally motivated. It's the FOMO, the fear of the missing out. All right. Verse 3, a stone is heavy and sand is weighty, but a fool's wrath is heavier than them both. You cannot appease the wrath of fools. Why would you want to? If you're internally motivated as opposed to externally motivated, you will never try to appease the wrath of fools. You won't brag about what you're going to do, and you won't brag about what you're doing. You won't appease the wrath of fools. You also will not try to stand up to the scrutiny of the envious. Let me explain something. Nobody who is doing more than you is ever going to be critical vocally, openly about the things you are doing. Number one, they don't have time. They're too busy doing their own stuff. So we don't try to stand up to the scrutiny of the envious. Open rebuke is better than secret love. If your soul is full, you're going to surround yourself with people who will be honest with you, who love you, warts and all, but they're not afraid to point out the warts. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. You're not going to, if your soul is full, you're not going to be externally motivated. You're going to be internally motivated. So you're not going to surround yourself with people that are going to flatter you, people who are going to be unctuous. I cannot stand an unctuous individual, mostly because I used to be one and I didn't know it. Being unctuous and flattery go hand in hand. And if you've listened to me for any amount of time, you've heard me talk about this, and it's rather embarrassing. I meant the best in the world, but at these lectureships and stuff like that, I'll use Dan Winkler, for instance. Dan Winkler, when I saw him at the lectureship, I walked across the auditorium during a break to shake his hand and tell him how much I loved him and respected him and this, that, and the other. And I wasn't putting on. Everything I said was true. But I could tell by his body language that was cringy. That made him feel weird. And it dawned on me, this fella don't. Here's the thing. If you're going to go up to somebody and criticize them, or if you're going to go up to somebody and brag on them, if you're going to go up to somebody and praise them, you need to build a little bit of a relationship with them first, because it's the same kind of feeling. It's almost like it's like a confrontation. You're having a confrontation. Praising someone is typically a good confrontation, but it's confrontation nonetheless. It still makes you nervous. Your palms still get sweaty. If you don't believe me, for you single men, walk up to a strange woman and try to compliment her and see if it affects you. Now go up to another strange woman and say something out of the blue that's negative. It's the same feelings. Biologically, your body reacts to it the same way. Anyway, I'm running far afield. Let's get back. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. You're not going to keep around yourself unctuous people who flatter. You're going to keep people around yourself that are real with you. They're going to say things like, Tony, that was some good meat you had in your sermon, but man, it was arranged haphazardly. You didn't do a good job arranging it. I'll never forget one of my teachers. Well, he wasn't my teacher. He came to the school after I graduated. I don't really want to say his name. I don't know why I don't want to say his name. I just feel weird. So I'm still not going to say his name. But it was at the East Hill Church of Christ. I was speaking at a lectureship. And after the lecture, here come with the lectureship book in his hand and his finger marked in it like this. He said, Brother Brewer, that was so wonderfully arranged. That was such a good lecture. You couldn't have arranged your manuscript and your information any better than you did. Man, that was so big to me. Now, that's not unctuous. That's not flattery. Even if he and I didn't know one another, that is substantive. But we did know one another, so it certainly wasn't flattery or unctuous. Anyway, let's keep walking down here. Now, this gets us into 7 and 8. The full soul loatheth the honeycomb. So remember, we've already walked down it. If you're internally motivated, if you're a full soul, you're not going to brag about what you're doing tomorrow. You're not going to brag about what you're doing now. You're not going to appease the anger. You're not going to appease the wrath of fools. You're not going to try to stand up to the scrutiny of the envious. You're going to keep around yourself people that are going to be real with you and not flatterers or unctuous people or yes men. Because the full soul loatheth the honeycomb. But if your soul is not full, if you're hungry, you're going to go to those things. You're going to surround yourself with people who motivate you externally. And a lot of times that's pathological. It's very unhealthy. It's very maladaptive. Can things be maladaptive in degrees? It's either good or bad. It's either maladaptive or it's not. Anyway, now, if you are internally motivated, or if you're not internally motivated, and you go to these things outside of yourself, then here's what you get. As a bird that wandereth from her nest, so is a man that wandereth from his place. If your soul isn't full, you'll forget your place because you'll always be trying to seek out that external motivation. And what happens to a baby bird that falls to its death? Well, spoiler alert. What happens to a baby bird that falls from its nest? Well, it either dies on impact, it dies from exposure to weather, or it dies because exposure to weather and starvation, or it dies because a predator finds it and eats it. Don't leave the nest. We have, it blows my mind. We got double-digit viewers on YouTube. Thank you so much. Please, if you would, back out of the chat on YouTube and give the thumbs up button a hit. Then get back into the chat and say hello. Incidentally, Maria, hello. And Kelly Marie's good morning. Sheila Cole, hello. Tony, Jenny Blackwell, good morning. Terry Crooks, good morning. And Connie Barden. It's good to see everybody. And yeah, this is, like I said, I didn't deliver the podcast today that I intended, but I really wanted to bring that lesson out. Is we need to harness the fear of missing out. And I suppose if I'm going to go as far as I need to go, we need to convert it from the fear of missing out to just, I'm striving toward a goal because that's what I want to do. But let's talk through this real quick. Oh, spoiler alert, Paige Perry says, but look, this is what I get. Evidently, Paige Perry put some emoticons. When's the last time y'all heard the word emoticon? Like 1999? Anyway, spoiler alert, and then text green, game over, face blue, smiling. Something happened with your emojis. All right. Listen, I'm going to run through some of this information. We've got 35 minutes here. I want to run through some of this that I have prepared. And, yeah, put your questions, comments, observations in the comment section. I really appreciate them. And those comments, they really make the show do well. In our fast-paced world, everyone is going somewhere or waiting for something to happen, often with a heightened sense of urgency. People feel pressure to be in the right place at the right time, whether it's meeting deadlines, seizing opportunities, keeping up with social expectations. When things do not unfold according to the timeline we expect, anxiety follows. And as I've been talking through this podcast, this phenomenon is often described as FOMO, fear of missing out. Well, this isn't happening on my timeline. What am I missing? What am I missing out on? What's other people getting that I'm not? What am I missing out on? So FOMO is commonly associated with like superficial desires. It represents something deeper when understood in a spiritual sense. This natural inclination, and we all have this natural inclination towards urgency. We should apply that same inclination toward our salvation. When it comes to obeying God, we feel the same fear. We should at least feel the same fear. We need to feel the same fear of missing out, because nothing is more crucial to our eternal well-being. So there, hello, Greg James. Sorry, I looked at the comment section. I had a comment there. So let's talk about urgency, a necessary urgency. Many people grow anxious about missing out on worldly opportunities while they reject their own soul's salvation. 2 Corinthians 6:2 is pretty clear. I have heard thee in a time accepted, and in the day of salvation have I succored thee. Behold, now is the accepted time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. 2 Corinthians 6:2. That's from Paul. The urgency that people apply to daily tasks should pale in comparison to the urgency we should have about our eternal future. FOMO, in the spiritual sense, is not a bad thing, actually. It's crucial. Jesus repeatedly warns against the dangers of being unprepared. Matthew 25:13, watch therefore, for ye know neither the day nor the hour when the Son of Man cometh. We have to be prepared. We sing the song on Sundays, watch and pray. If people can feel a sense of panic over missing a fleeting opportunity in life or missing a quote-unquote Black Friday sale at the Walmarts, how much more urgent should the matter be of their eternal soul? Even with the hint of the ports shut down, folks felt the urgency of that enough where they had another run on the toilet paper in the grocery stores. We can remember something so little as the convenience of having sanitary wipes or paper, but how come we struggle with remembering the state of our soul? And it's an urgency, folks. Quite frankly, it's rooted in eternity. Our time on earth is short. I remember this one ecumenical pastor or whatever. In a video, he's walking out on stage. And he looks like he's carrying about 20, 25 feet, maybe 30 feet. I have a terrible estimator. But it's a long piece of rope. And it's white. But on the end, he has about yay much, and I'm holding my thumb and index finger, what I feel to be is about 1.5 inches. Just a very teeny bit of rope had some black tape wrapped around it on one end. And the point that he made, he said, this is not an adequate illustration, but it may help. The entirety of the rope represents eternity. This black piece of tape represents your life on earth. The urgency that we should feel with our salvation is rooted in eternity. Our time on earth is short, but the consequences of our spiritual decisions are eternal. As I referenced earlier, James, our brother, describes life as a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away, James 4:14. Life's brevity should create a sense of urgency for every soul to respond to God's call before it's too late. 2 Thessalonians 2:14, you understand we are called by the gospel. If you know that Jesus lived, Jesus died, Jesus was resurrected, and Jesus ascended, then you have been called by the gospel of Jesus Christ. Sadly, many spend their days worried about missing out on earthly pleasures and achievements, but they neglect their soul's eternal condition. We know that God desires all to be saved and to come to a knowledge of the truth. Paul, by inspiration, states as much. 1 Timothy 2:4, who will have all men to be saved and to come to a knowledge of the truth. Yet salvation, folks, it's not automatic. It requires obedience to the gospel. There's no guarantee that tomorrow will provide another opportunity. I can think of one man in the Bible that says, almost thou persuadest me to be a Christian, and another says, come back at a more convenient season. Uh-oh. Felix and Agrippa. Am I bleeding those two together? Anyway, that's some stuff to whet your appetite. Go to the book of Acts, read it, and see what Felix said and see what Agrippa said. Both of them didn't have any sense of urgency about their salvation. There's no guarantee tomorrow is going to provide you another opportunity. Jesus' words are clear. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, but he that believeth not shall be damned. The question is not whether there is urgency, but whether we recognize the urgency of obeying God now before it's too late. So let's see if we can apply this spiritual FOMO. It is okay to obey the gospel because of an external stimulus. For instance, in Acts chapter 2, those people on the day of Pentecost obeyed because they were scared. Nothing wrong with that. The Philippian jailer, it's very possible he obeyed the gospel because he was grateful. Nothing wrong with that. But regardless of why you obey, make sure you stay because you love God, because you believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those that diligently seek him. Harnessing a healthy fear of missing out on salvation can be the wake-up call many need to take their spiritual condition seriously. Just because people arrange their lives to avoid missing important events or opportunities, we must prioritize our relationship with God. Good comments in the comment section. I'm almost done. I'm going to look forward to them. And I just realized I read my note wrong. Just as people rearrange their lives to avoid missing out on important events and opportunities, we must prioritize our relationship with God and rearrange our lives for that. Again, I'm going to read 2 Corinthians 6:2. For he saith, I have heard thee in the time accepted, in a day of salvation have I succored thee. Behold, now is the accepted time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. Procrastination in the spiritual sense is dangerous. Every moment without Christ is a moment lost. You ever thought about what Paul meant when he said redeeming the time because the days are evil? Before you obeyed the gospel, you were wasting God's time. You need to obey the gospel and start trying to make up for lost time. That's what redeem the time means. It is time for Christians to feel the weight of spiritual FOMO, not out of a sense of panic or anxiety, but out of an awareness of their eternal stakes. The urgency should compel us to examine where we stand with God, to make our calling and election sure, to make necessary changes before it's too late. The consequences of missing out on God's grace are far greater than anything this world offers. The world may offer countless distractions, and everyone is pursuing something with urgency, but nothing compares to the urgency of securing salvation. Jesus' return at the end of our life. Jesus' return or the end of our life could come at any time, and we must be prepared. The fear of missing out on God's eternal blessing should push us toward obedience today, not tomorrow. Take a moment, if you're listening to this, to think about where you stand spiritually. Is your salvation secure? Have you obeyed the gospel? Or are you still waiting? Consider your spiritual state and act with urgency, because nothing is more important than ensuring your soul's future with God. And the way to do that is to acknowledge the truth of the gospel, that Jesus is the Son of God, God in the flesh, that he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high, that you have committed sin for which you need forgiven. Change your mind about that sin, that's repentance. Then submit yourself to the watery grave of baptism. But God be thanked. You were the servants of sin, but you have obeyed from the heart that form of doctrine which was delivered you. Being then made free from sin, you became the servants of righteousness, folks. That verse is clear. In order to be free from sin, to become the servants of righteousness, you have to obey from the heart that form of doctrine. That form of doctrine is the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. The form is the burial, baptism. All right. Let's get to the comments section. Why do you wait, dear brother? The harvest is passing away. Absolutely. That's a good song. Why do you wait, dear brother? Hey, Alabama says we strain at gnats sometimes. Yeah, we do. That's that FOMO. Man alive, I've chased after things that when I caught them, only then did I have the clarity of thinking to know that I missed out on something much, much better, because I was so hyper-focused on the one thing. Oh, Greg James. Paige Perry spoiler alert. That still makes me laugh. Well, and Hey, Alabama says, hey, Greg and everyone here. Awesome. I would ask you all, just for fun, to go to the website that I'm about to put in the comments section and just subscribe. That's it. This is Podbean. Podbean has done something really interesting. Whenever I was just doing the podcast where I would sit and talking to a mic and I would upload the audio, I got to where we was doing about 3,000 downloads a month. It's putting out a podcast like three days a week, 4 days a week, something like that. And now we're getting about half that. We went down really, really low because we changed the format. But I'm still thinking we should be finding an audience that likes this format in a podcast platform. So if you could, go to cogitations.podbean.com and subscribe. You don't have to listen from there. You can listen anywhere, or don't listen. Just subscribe. See what happens. I'm curious. I don't know if that's something we need to just shut down, and I need to move that entire podcast channel over to Substack, because it's costing me like $108 a year per $108 per year in US dollars. So anyway, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't like spinning my wheels though. So there's that. Connie Barton says, it is so hard to get someone to see the need when they don't really believe there is a God. Yeah. Or it's really hard to get somebody to see the need and to feel the sense of urgency when they've got all the people around them telling them, well, you have a good heart. You prayed and asked Jesus into your heart and made him Lord of your life. You're saved. You don't need anything. But that's hard. That's hard too. I almost would rather deal with the atheist, a person just flat out didn't believe in God. Almost, I said. Thank you, Diana Harden. She says, great reminder. Thank you, Tony. All right. Saturday, I haven't nailed down the exact time yet. I've got to talk to Aaron. But Saturday the 19th, in the evening, it'll be 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock Central Standard Time. One of the two. I don't know. I don't think it'll be any earlier. I know it won't be any later. I say that. I guess I should never say never. But Saturday, we're going to have the 1,000 subscriber celebration. We're like 1,080 something subscribers now, 1,080 even, maybe. I don't know. But we're going to give away this Bible that Aaron Dotson has, and he did a review on it. There we go. Now that'll get me there. All right, videos. The ultimate Bible review and giveaway. Let me get over to the comment section where I can put this in there. If you're interested in what the Bible is, it's a goatskin, New King James, double column. Each line begins a new, or each verse begins a new line. It's really nice. And he's got a review for it. And we're going to be giving that Bible away during the live stream. What'll happen is about the latter part of the live stream, if I can, I'm going to do a share screen where I can do a random number generator, and then I'll just go down and I will count the comments, and whichever number that whichever number corresponds with the comment, that's the person that wins the Bible. And I don't care where you are, we'll ship it to you. All right. Be sure to consider supporting us monetarily. There's ways to do that. You can do it through PayPal. We have a tip jar, nearchurches@gmail.com. You can also subscribe on Substack. And I'll put this overlay. I've got to fix my overlay. But Substack, you can subscribe there, $5 a month, all that good stuff. Be sure and do the YouTube. Scott Beck, he's gaming the system. I'm going to comment like this. Ha. Yeah, I mean, here's the funny thing. YouTube doesn't recognize that as spam. I know it's not, I know you're not spamming. I know you're being funny, which is funny. I'm thankful. But yeah, you know it's a little bit asinine. That's why it's funny. Well, the funny thing is YouTube thinks that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. YouTube thinks I just scored 6 new comments. So yeah, the more you comment during a YouTube live stream, the more YouTube shows it. So here's the thing. Y'all do what you want to do, but the more comments you make, the more chances you have of winning. All right, I want to get this off the screen. Seven's pattern says LOL. All right, what am I doing here? I wanted to go through a couple of things. Now, hey, Alabama's in on it. First off, for show topics and questions, send an email to www.christianityisnow@gmail.com. I haven't gotten any questions the last week or so, maybe two. Time gets away from me. I feel like it's been a month since we've gotten a question, but I don't think that's true. Anyway, if you have questions, comments, show topics, send an email. And if you want to send us a care package, I would not be disappointed if I got an email saying that there is a package in my P.O. box up here, and that package contained a bottle of A1 sauce from the United States. But there's the P.O. box on the screen. P.O. Box 99900 HR 567317, RPO Mountain Road, Moncton, New Brunswick, E1C 0T1. All right. Homeschoolers have no sense of time. Yeah, it's I just lost. I don't know what to do. I just lost track. I don't know. It seems like a month, but then when I apply my mind to it, I'm like, no. Last week I did a question from the email. Anyway, Paige Perry's laughing pretty good. Y'all, I'm done. I'm tickled pink at the turnout today. Thank you so much. Now remember, if you really want to help us, yeah, the more comments, the more Facebook, the more YouTube looks at the algorithm and says, let's ship this out to people to see it. And another thing you can do is back out of the live stream comments and go hit the thumbs up button. Will I post the address in writing? I will. I will. Hold on a second. Let me. The answer is yes. I just got to. There we go. There we go. Now I'm gonna post it twice just to make sure. Yeah. What particularly, Sevens? I'd like to hear your thoughts about the 5 Jewish Maglia, or the 5 scrolls: Ruth, Esther, Ecclesiastes, Solomon, or Song of Solomon, Song of Songs, and Lamentations. Why would Lamentations be included in that? No, I see why. Never mind. Yeah, Canadian addresses. Well, first off, this address is kind of weird because it's a virtual PO box, which means if you send, this is just so I don't have to put my home address out on the internet. But when you send this, if you send anything to here, I get an email that says I have a package, and then I just go to the post office and get it. But so that way it's free. That way I don't have to pay for a PO box. But yeah, Sevens, let me know specifically what you'd be interested in. I mean, my thoughts are right now just Ruth is a good one. Esther is the book about the providence of God. Ecclesiastes is about it's Ecclesiastes is actually, and you may want to, not you, Seven, I'm not trying to point out ignorance. I just realized how condescending this was going to sound. I'm just going to say it anyway. Offer me some grace if you would. Self-actualization. Look up self-actualization. Ecclesiastes is about the self-actualization of a man and the pitfalls of self-actualization. Because if you fully self-actualize, you actually run the risk of diving head first into the deep end of nihilism. And nobody wants that. Hey, Alabama, can you get a P.O. box like that in the States? I have no clue. I've never asked. I'm sure you could. Why is only Lamentations a distinct acrostic out of the 5? Yeah, well, that's the thing. Acrostics, the acrostic don't really matter because the names of the books are almost arbitrary. Like in Jewish tradition, the names of the books of what we call the Old Testament, they're just usually the first word in the book. So I don't know. Yeah, you can actually get free apps that do that. I use a virtual phone number when I don't want to give people my permanent phone number. Yeah, I've got an app for free called Text Now that I'll do that from time to time. I wish I could just pay a one-time fee and have a Canadian phone number or a text app like that. I wish I could pay a one-time fee and not have to continually use that phone number so I could keep it. That way it could be consistent. All right, folks. I think I'm done. I think I've done all the promo that I'm going to do. Probably not all the promo I need to do. But remember, Substack, the P.O. Box, Patreon, www.patreon.com/Christianity Now. And if you are a supporter on Patreon and you don't have access to the Substack, the stuff behind the paywall, please let me know. And I will make sure you get that. Folks, urgency. The time is now. Today is the day of salvation. That's an interesting, I think in the context that the psalmist wrote it. Today is the accepted day. Today is the day of salvation. He was probably looking forward to the day of Pentecost prophetically. But generally speaking, when's the best time to be saved? When's the best time to obey the gospel? Yesterday. When's the worst time? Tomorrow. When's the best time? Right now. And don't think I'm more clever than I am. I stole that. Actually, I didn't steal it. I stole the idea. What I heard is, when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the second best time? Right now. Yeah, the best time to obey the gospel is yesterday. The second best time is right now. The worst time is tomorrow. I'll leave you with that, folks. God bless. Be sure and subscribe. Cogitations, Apple Podcast, Spotify, TuneIn, Radio, Podbean, and support us monetarily. Share the content on your social media platform. Make sure you subscribe to Christianity Now Streams. Stay tuned for updates on the Saturday, October 19th live stream for the Bible giveaway. God bless y'all. This has been Tony Brew with Cogitations.